She didn't sound like someone making a deal. She sounded like someone who had already lost everything worth keeping. And the moment those words left her lips, his eyes moved. Not to her, but to the saddlebag draped across her horse. The girl stood in the open doorway, dress ripped at the shoulder, chest heaving in the scorching afternoon air. She didn't flinch. Didn't look away. You want to look? Go ahead and look. Cal Danner went still. One hand rested on the worn cedar post of his fence, the other hanging loose at his side. The Arizona sun over Coldwater Flats didn't forgive anything. Not the land, not the animals, and not the men who tried to work it. He had crossed paths with desperate women before. Hunger and fear had a way of stripping people down to something raw. But this wasn't desperation performing for an audience. This was something quieter, something already past the point of pretending. Dust had settled into the lines of her face. A dark stain ran down the length of her sleeve and along her ribs. Dried blood, not fresh, not fatal, but enough to tell a story she hadn't bothered to speak aloud yet. Her eyes were pale gray and unnervingly calm for someone whose hands wouldn't stop trembling. She gripped the doorframe like it was the only solid thing left in the world. Cal moved toward her, the way a man moves toward a lantern in a windstorm. Slow, deliberate, afraid of putting it out. "You lost?" he asked. She didn't answer that. She pulled in a breath and said, "There are men behind me. They're not far." Cal looked past her. Down the long stretch of cracked earth that ran toward Ridgeback Pass, a thin line of dust was climbing into the white sky. Moving steady. Moving with purpose. He looked back at her. Up close, she was younger than the road had made her look. 22, maybe less. Too young to be standing on a stranger's porch, wearing that expression, the expression of a person who has already done their grieving and come out the other side hollowed, out but still walking. His gaze dropped for just a moment to the saddlebag tied behind her horse. The leather was cracked and discolored, soaked through in two places where something dark had dried into it. "They coming for you specifically?" he said. She swallowed. "They won't stop until they get what they came for." Cal Danner had spent 11 years making sure nothing from his past could find him out here. No debts, no enemies, no loose ends blowing in on the wind. And now trouble was riding up his road in a column of dust, wearing the shape of a wounded girl and a bag full of secrets. She swayed. It happened fast, one moment standing, the next going sideways, and Cal caught her before she reached the ground. She weighed almost nothing. But even in that fragile, half-conscious state, there was something in her that hadn't surrendered, a stubbornness buried deep in the muscle and bone of her, something that had kept her upright and moving long past the point when most people would have quit. Behind them, the hoofbeats were no longer a suggestion. They were a fact. Cal looked at the road, then down at the girl. He had a simple choice in front of him, and he understood both sides of it clearly. When a man sees trouble riding hard toward his gate and still reaches out and opens it, is he rescuing someone or just widening the door for something worse? He didn't answer that out loud. He carried her inside. The cabin was spare and sun-warmed and hadn't seen company in a long while. Cal set her down on the cot near the far wall, the one that caught a cross breeze through the window when the wind was right. "Name," he said. A pause, then quietly, "Vera." She braced herself the way someone does when they've learned that giving their name starts something they can't finish. Cal noticed. He took one deliberate step back, putting distance between them before she had to ask for it. He filled a basin from the pitcher on the shelf and set it down beside her without ceremony. "No nonsense," he said, mostly to himself. Something in her shoulders dropped, just slightly. Just enough. He worked without talking much. Cut the sleeve away from where the blood had sealed it to her skin. The wound beneath was a graze, long and angry but not deep. Bullet or rock edge, hard to say which. Painful, not deadly. He cleaned it with what he had. She flinched once. Then she locked it down and held still. He respected that. "You were riding through the night," he said. "It wasn't a question." "Most of it," she confirmed. He paused, tilted his head. "Hear that?" She went rigid. "Hooves," he said. Closer than before. Neither of them moved for a breath. "What's in the bag?" he asked, going back to work. Her eyes cut to the saddle propped near the door. "Nothing you need to worry about." That was a lie, and they both knew it. Cal looked out the window. The dust column had spread. He could see movement now, shapes, not just shadows. This your trouble or someone else's? She took a moment. It didn't start out mine. He didn't push further. He crossed to the door, pulled it half shut, then came back and crouched near the center of the room. He rolled the rug back and worked his fingers into the groove of the trap door. The hinges complained. They hadn't moved in years. Vera stared at it. You're hiding me. I'm creating distance, he said. There's a difference. She shook her head weakly. They'll search everything. Then they'll lose time doing it, he said flatly. He slid the saddlebag toward her. Take it down with you. She looked at him for a long moment, then took it. She lowered herself into the dark space beneath the floor carefully, conserving what strength she had left. Just before he closed the door over her, she looked up. Why are you doing this? Cal held the door, thinking. He didn't have a polished answer. He had an honest one. Because of how you looked at me when you said it, he said. That was enough. He shut the door, laid the rug flat, stood up and listened. Hoofbeats, close now, not slowing. He picked up his rifle and walked out to the porch. 4 riders came in hard and pulled up short, sending a wave of dust rolling past the fence line. The man at the front didn't look rushed. He had the unhurried ease of someone accustomed to arriving places and having them go the way he expected. Fletcher Cole. Cal didn't know him personally, but the name had weight in this part of the territory. The kind of man who hired problems solved and never touched them himself. Cole scanned the property, fence, barn, trough, house, the way a man inventories something he's thinking about buying. His eyes landed on Vera's horse tied at the side of the barn and didn't move off it. Looks like something came through here recently, he said pleasantly. Cal didn't move from the porch. Things drift through all the time. Doesn't mean they belong to anybody standing in front of me. One of the riders chuckled. The one with the badge stepped forward. We're tracking a young woman. Took something that wasn't hers. Thought maybe she'd come this direction. Lots of directions in this country, Cal said. Can't account for all of them. Cole's head tilted slightly. He was reassessing. Mind if my men take a look around? Yeah, Cal said. I mind quite a bit. A rider dismounted and walked toward the barn like the answer had already been decided. Cal's rifle came up. Not all the way, not threatening yet, just present. A reminder that decisions had edges. The man stopped walking. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then one of Cole's other men crouched near the porch steps. He brushed his fingers across the dirt, studying the impression there. A smaller boot print, fresh, angling toward the door. He pointed. She came inside. Cole smiled, slow and certain. Well now, seems like you do have company after all. Below the floor, in the dark and the close heat, Vera heard every word. Her hand tightened around the bag's strap until her knuckles ached. If they kept pressing, Cal was finished. She understood that without having to reason it through. They hadn't ridden this far to leave a witness standing. She stayed still for one more breath. Then she moved. The rear crawlspace hatch groaned softly as she pushed it open behind the cabin. She came around the side of the barn, slowly, upright, visible, and walked into the open where everyone could see her. Every head turned. Cal didn't move. But he felt the moment change, felt the whole situation pivot on a single point. Cole's eyes lit up. There you are. Vera didn't step back. She looked at him steadily, then let her gaze drift, just briefly, barely a second, toward the barn. You want to look, she said quietly. Go ahead and look. She didn't say it with fire. She said it like a woman who had already emptied her pockets and had nothing left to protect, but her eyes had moved. And Cole followed them, exactly where she wanted him to go. He thought he had her. He thought the story was over. That was the moment he lost. Cole moved toward the barn with the confidence of a man collecting something owed to him. Elias watched every step. First Vera, then the barn. Then Cole disappearing into the shade inside. Then he moved. One of Cole's men grabbed for him from behind. Cal had been expecting that, or something like it. He turned into the grab, drove his elbow hard into the man's ribs, and put him face down into the water trough. The wood cracked on impact. The man didn't get back up quickly. Inside the barn, Cole was searching, impatient, pushing through old tack and stacked equipment. What he didn't know, what Cal had been meaning to fix for 3 months, was that the upper storage rack had been failing for a while. Too much weight. Rotted rope, a single anchor point doing the work of 4. Cal reached the support post at the barn's outer wall, grabbed the fraying line looped around it, and pulled. The rack came down like a judgment. Feed bags, iron hooks, coiled leather, lumber, all of it dropping at once into the space where Cole was standing. The sound it made was enormous in that enclosed space. Dust and splinters filled the air. Cole went down under it, pinned, furious, shouting things that stopped making sense. Outside, the deputy finally drew his weapon. Vera was faster than she thought she'd be. She had the old shotgun from beside the door in both hands before she finished the thought. They were shaking, but she held the barrel level. She didn't fire. She didn't need to. 1 second of silence. Cal stepped around the corner, raised his revolver, and put a single shot through the deputy's gun hand. Clean, deliberate, surgical. The pistol hit the dirt. The deputy stumbled back, cursing, grabbing his wrist. The last rider didn't wait to see what came next. He hit the saddle and rode hard, raising a rooster tail of dust that didn't settle for a long time. Quiet returned the way it always does after violence, gradually, almost apologetically. Wind in the dry grass, labored breathing. The tick of cooling wood. Cal walked into the barn. Cole was alive, pinned beneath 200 pounds of collapsed shelving, his authority completely gone. "You came onto my land looking for a fight," Cal said, looking down at him. "You're taking the loss back with you." "Should have handled you at the start," Cole spat. Cal crouched and began pulling the weight off him. Not to release him, to get access to his wrists. Vera stood in the doorway, watching. Her voice was barely there when she asked, "Why not just leave him?" Cal worked the rope around Cole's hands, slow and sure. "Because a dead man stays silent," he said. "And I want this one to talk. Loudly. To the right people." That was the part nobody had predicted. Cal Danner wasn't ending anything in this barn. He was carrying it somewhere harder, somewhere with courts and clerks and ink on paper. And the road into Prescott might ask more of him than anything that had just happened here. They rode in before the day's last light left the sky. 3 of them, a rancher, a battered young woman, and a man tied to his saddle who looked considerably less powerful than he had that morning. Cal didn't slow down on the main street. He rode straight to the county land office like a man who had already settled the question of whether this was worth doing. Vera didn't hang back. She carried the saddlebag inside herself and set it on the clerk's desk without a word of preamble. The room went quiet fast. Cole tried to talk first. Tried to frame the story his way. He was good at that. He'd had years of practice making his version of things sound like the only version, but Vera spoke plainly. No drama, no performance. Just the facts laid out in order, one after another, like stones across a creek. She opened the bag. Inside was a deed, original, signed, properly witnessed, to a stretch of land Cole had been calling abandoned for 2 years while quietly working to acquire it at a fraction of its value. Water rights and acreage that could make a man in this territory very comfortable or strip every neighboring ranch down to bare earth if he controlled it completely. Her father's name was on the document. The dates made everything clear. The clerk read it once, then read it again more slowly. Cole's voice changed pitch after that. It always does when men like him feel the ground move. A few days later, the land felt the same and entirely different. Same heat. Same silence. Same horizon. Cal worked his fence line in the long evening light while Vera sat on the porch mending a tear in the elbow of his old work shirt. No urgency. No explaining to do. Just 2 people who had walked through something hard together without losing anything they needed to keep. There's a thing worth sitting with at the end of a story like this. Cal almost didn't open the door. He came within a breath of letting her go, letting the riders pass, letting whatever happened next happen somewhere he couldn't see it. He didn't. He chose to step out, to carry the problem into the light instead of leaving it buried in the dirt. And that road, the one that goes toward honesty instead of away from it, that one costs something. It cost him his quiet, his peace. 3 days of his life and a good portion of his nerves. But some things are worth the price of breaking your silence. When trouble finds your door, you can wait and hope the sound of it fades. Or you can